welcome to the latest episode of the Our Creative Connection podcast. It gives me great joy to be able to welcome Stephanie and Leanne from Photovoice Worldwide, who are joining me in conversation. I've been really excited to get this conversation going. Obviously, photo voice is something that's dear to my heart and something I'm really passionate about. So it's great to have this opportunity to share that with a couple of people who I know care about it as much as I do. So perhaps, so first of all, welcome. Thanks for joining me on the podcast, both of you. Would you like to introduce yourselves and perhaps tell us a
Yeah,
little bit about
definitely.
yourselves?
Yeah, thank you so much. We're so excited to be here and share about some of the work that we're doing at Photovoice Worldwide. So my name is Lee Ann Tourigny. I currently work as the project coordinator for Photovoice Worldwide. And then in addition to that, I'm a second year master's student at UNC Charlotte, North Carolina, studying community psychology and working as coordinator for disability outreach at the Career Center. So really into looking at the inclusive space, making sure that everyone has a voice. So a little bit about my journey with Photo Voice specifically. I first learned about this method about 4 years ago when I was working on my undergraduate thesis. I was studying therapeutic photography with college students. And so there was a part where I did some qualitative research, and then I did some interviews with professionals who are using photography in various ways, looking at social impact and therapeutic ways. So out of the 10 professionals I interviewed, one of them was Laura Lorenz, who is our co-founder at Photovoice Worldwide. And she taught me all about Photo Voice and shared about the work that she does. Fast forward a few years, I took the foundational course that we offer, talking with pictures, and fell in love with the method. And I got the opportunity to do a summer internship with Photo Voice Worldwide, doing a literature review on photo voice and special education programs. After that, I did a few different projects with the company and then came on in 2021. My role, I do a lot of support with courses, social media, a lot of our community development efforts, and some website support, as well as doing some literature reviews for some of our clients and partners that we work with, as well as helping with their conference. This method really stuck with me because it took my two passions of psychology and photography and kind of mashed it into one. And it really focuses on bringing voices of people of all different backgrounds, elevating their perspectives and giving them a platform to share about their experiences, really focusing on that collaboration and interaction with the community. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll hand it over to Stephanie to introduce herself.
Thanks, Leanne. So happy to be here today. My name is Stephanie Lloyd. I'm consulting lead for Photovoice Worldwide, and I'm also a program evaluator and a hobby photographer of many years. So, as a child, I always loved photographs. I loved photographing, taking my mom's camera and playing around with it. And I learned how to develop black and white film in a dark room. Pretty early on. So I just always loved photography as a method and some way to kind of get my hands dirty and that art form. And so I first heard about the Photo Voice method in graduate school. I was a grad assistant in an office, and there was a brown bag lunch that we were all encouraged to go to. And a colleague was talking about working with youth with disabilities and helping them discuss their next steps after high school, and actually asking them, not asking their parents, their caregiver, other, clinicians, but asking these students with disabilities, what do they want? Where do they see their future going? And this was, what are their hopes for the future? And this was using Photo Voice. And so that, really caught my ear and eye because it was a way, a research method that used photography, which I was like, wow, it's like my two passions and my two loves coming together. So after that, I always was reading about Photo Voice, trying to figure out how to include this method in different facets of my work, and place it in there. And in 2018, I say found in quotes, Laura on the LinkedIn, and she had gotten her master's at UMass Boston as well. So I reached out to her and found out she was offering this course, and I took the very first Talking with Pictures course online. And from there we were off. I asked her, how I could contribute, how I could work with her, and we've kind of built this community and offering a number of different courses and consulting work that we've built along the way. And it's really from a place of, somebody that I have a deep passion for participatory and equitable evaluation. I've done a lot of work in youth development and community improvement and working with volunteer engagement. And so I love Photovoice and these other methods that are really inclusive and support diverse groups in the data collection and also the analysis process as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much, both of you. I sort of encountered Photovoice and saw and found it really fitted alongside, other passions that I'd got around sort of creativity and community development was sort of my background. And yet we all sort of described different journeys towards it. But then once we found it, it was kind of like, yeah, this is, oh, wow, this transforms this other thing that I really care about as well. Like, I need to do more of this, so that really stands out for me to hear you both describe your journey towards being involved with Photovoice. And Stephanie, I'm not going to turn the camera around because I might break it, but I'm sat in my dark room as well, so I do darkroom workshops as well alongside this. So,
yay!
Good to
dark
hear
room,
you.
it's kind of going away a little bit.
Got to try to keep it alive. So
very expensive and
yeah,
a laborious process, but
yeah, very much so. But so that's probably something I'm interested in exploring in a project next year. Hopefully, is you mentioned the hands-on element of sort of making a photograph rather than taking a photograph. So I'm really interested in that sort of physical sort of process as well, and how that might maybe just change the conversation. I think that's what I've found with Photovoice is it's just another way to frame a conversation, and then perhaps you have a different starting point, perhaps you have a different ending point too. So that's something that I'm really interested in as well. And I guess the flexibility of this approach is something that sort of stands out to me as well. You touched on a few examples of places where you've applied this, Stephanie. Are there any projects that stand out for you, ones that either you've enjoyed or you've been surprised, or that you maybe learned something that you weren't expecting, or can you tell us a little story about a project?
Yeah, absolutely. So, at Photovoice Worldwide, we work with a number of different clients on different projects, and this can be wherever they are in their process, whether they want us to consult or help put together some session guides or actually co-facilitate the sessions. And so, it looks different, and it's not a one size fits all, which you're touching on, and that's the thing that I love. And so, more recently, I co-facilitated Photovoice project with Trillium Health Partners, and they're located in Canada. And we hosted caregiver groups and young adult groups separately. And these were talking about mental health and support around their mental health journey and where they're getting their support and resources from. And I thought that was an interesting way to do that. So rather than having one group together, having young adults in one group and then having caregivers in another group, and thinking about these things kind of simultaneously in parallel. And then, running the group separately. And this is something that's still going on. The planning for it is still going on, but eventually having an exhibit or having some type of ending resulting project from these two Photovoice projects that kind of run parallel, so people can see kind of what things are bubbling up and surfacing, and what people are thinking about in these two separate groups around the same topic. And I really enjoyed that way of doing that. I've talked to some others around thinking about, when we have youth and we have adults, maybe having them do the first session together and then splitting them up and then bringing them back together. And so there really is a good, thinking about what's best for the participants, I think, is most important when you're making these decisions. But it's exciting that there's, lots of room for innovation and ways to get together on this.
I've often thought, especially with the exhibition side of things as well, is that's almost a resource that can take on a life of its own as well, can't it? You know, it's not just a one-time thing, and you go, right, we've had the exhibition, that should just sit in a box now and never be seen again. It's, you know, I'm always encouraging people that I've worked with to say, you know, what else can we do to you know, invite people to see this, and then what else can we do to invite people to contribute to this? Like, this is like an ongoing thing, you know, we add to it, and it's a jump off point into conversations over time.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be just like an art exhibit
Yeah,
necessarily. And we're thinking about, putting together a coffee table book,
yeah,
having a webinar about some of these things in conversation, having it be a part of I know we worked with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they actually had it be part of their walk. And so the Photo
right.
Voice posters were up along the way for
I
one
love
of their
that.
walks. So it's an event that people are going to. And then
Yeah.
there's an online portion of that as well, so that people who were not comfortable coming out could also view. They were doing an online walk as well. And
Oh, I love that
so
idea. That's amazing. I'm
yeah.
making a mental note of that one, and I really like that. The idea of an exhibit is it can be quite formal, can be quite sort of, you know, power dynamics there, and um, so I'm always trying to think of ways to make that more informal, more accessible. Whether that's, you know, hosting it somewhere that where people would naturally kind of hang out anyway. We've done stuff in like cafes or you know, in
Mm.
schools or colleges and stuff. Um, but yeah, I've got more thinking to do about how to sort of overcome that. So I love the idea that it might be sort of up and around in the
Yeah.
community on
And is it
posters
a
or
video?
billboards
Is it
or
a website?
yeah, yeah, yeah. As long as people are seeing it and then able to invited to respond if they want.
Mhm.
Leanne, we might have discovered each other on LinkedIn. That might have been how
Yes.
we first got
Hmm.
connected. And one of the things that I really love about the work that you do is that you're always, well, from my perspective, it seems like you're always creating opportunities, um, not just to do the work, but then to bring practitioners together,
Hmm.
and to kind of, you know, grow that conversation around it. So, can you tell me a little more about the community building work that you do?
Yeah, definitely. So, part of what we want to do at Photovoice Worldwide is create that space for practitioners, researchers to come together to learn how to use the method, to talk about, the basics of the method, but then also to get more into those nuanced conversations around the ethics of photo voice,
Mm,
or, we're talking about exhibitions. So, like, what happens after the project, focusing on that impact. So that's really a big goal and mission that we have at our company. And that can range from focusing on sharing projects on our social media platforms. We have blogs where we invite practitioners to come and share about projects that they've done. What lessons have they learned through those projects? What are some tidbits that they can share with other practitioners as they're like looking at planning those projects? We also offer webinars where people can come and share about the different types of projects, and we have people from all over the world come and share that, which is really cool to see what's happening in different parts of a country or even just different continents and countries.
mm,
Um, and the online space really allows us to do that, to meet new people. Um, the method itself can sometimes almost feel a little siloed, so our goal is to really have a space where people can have that community and that space to share maybe challenges that they've experienced, or things that they've done, so that the method can continue to be used in different contexts. Do you have anything that I forgot to add, Stephanie, that you think we should?
Yeah, I think, just opening up, we've seen like a real energy around this. Anybody you tell about Photo Voice is really excited. And so um, it's been a way to, share and also bring people in. I think we started off with having these alumni reunions, we call them, and they were course participants who, after our courses, wanted to, stay connected every now and then. And so we tried to form kind of an alumni group where when you're working on a project, you can come back and ask questions. And we had a conversation around that. And we really found that there's a real energy from folks who are outside of that course alum group who wanted to not only join in our conversation, but also potentially had some information to share and to offer. And so really opened up our webinars and our blogs and our community to anyone who's working on this. Because I hear it over and over again, and I experience this too. You may be the only person in your university who's working on a project with Photovoice, or you hear about this method and you're working at an organization and you bring this to your boss and they're like, oh, I'm not sure, I'm not, I haven't really heard about that. Should we put that in the budget for next year? I'm not sure. And so it's really a way to kind of add some community and credibility in some cases. Like, look, there's other people all over the world doing this
I've just made this up. Yeah.
I didn't make it up. And there's some real benefits, or this could be a real asset to our organization. I think once people hear about that and see that and do some more reading, then they're more on board. But it is working in the evaluation space, that's been one of the first things to be like, do we need to do that? Can that can we shave that budget a little bit? And really showing examples of how powerful it can be, and how really is a great benefit for the evaluation, and also for the participants in programs as well, has been helpful.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? I mean, I've really valued and benefited, I think, from the opportunity to meet people from all over the world. I think my first guest on the podcast, Abril Rios, was someone that I met at a Photovoice Worldwide event, and there's several other people who I've sort of remained connected with, because it's like that. It's like what you just described. Then I'm not in an academic context, or I'm coming at this from a sort of community development perspective, I guess. But it's almost like that thing where you're like, oh, there's someone else doing the similar thing to me. Like, hey, I'm over here. Like, it's not just me. Like, found someone else who kind of might, I don't need to explain it every time, like what I'm doing or what I'm thinking about.
Or can I run this idea by you? Because since you now know what I'm talking about, I don't have to get you on board. Can I just
definitely
float this idea to you?
There's a real value in that. And I mean, in a UK context, I've worked in community development for a long time, but encountered Photovoice relatively recently. So certainly, it's not to say people aren't doing it, but I just hadn't noticed. I hadn't really connected the dots. I think it took the pandemic for me to sort of slow down long enough, because I'm really into photography, really into community development. So it's kind of, it boggles my brain that I hadn't put two and two together. I think I'd heard of it, but not really stopped long enough to think like, okay, well, I should explore this further. And then once I did, it got me rather than me get it. I think that's the thing, is, Photovoice gets you, doesn't it? So, what was I saying? Oh, so yeah, finding other people to share what worked and what didn't work, that kind of safe space to kind of share learning. I think that's a really important piece as well, isn't it? Is like, how could we improve things or do things differently, or at least pay attention to when things didn't kind of go so well, as well as sort of celebrate the wins.
Yeah. Sometimes the reports don't tell you all about exactly how the sessions ran, how the method was, working.
It was just like everything was great at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the struggle to get there.
We recently were at the American Public Health Association conference in Atlanta, Georgia, and we were at the expo floor, and there was about 4 of us there. And we saw such an energy around the community aspect of what we were doing. A lot of people were like, oh, we've been using the method, but we didn't know that this existed. And there was so much of that energy around that, getting to talk about their projects and, what we're talking about, run ideas off of each other. And it was really interesting to see how many people knew about the method, but, we're kind of like what we were saying a little bit like the only person at their university doing it or at their company doing it. So there was a lot of energy that we saw.
When I first encountered it, I think I kind of encountered it through sort of Paulo Freire's work. Really, I think I reread Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and then that kind of set me off down a rabbit hole of finding out more about photo voice. But always drawing on that asset-based community development or community development sort of background, really. I find it, can sits alongside so many aspects of that. How what you said, Stephanie, about how did the sessions go? Like what was involved, and so I'm always leaning into, how you create a safe space for people to kind of to be present and build trust and build connections, and then out of that comes all sorts of lovely things, hopefully. So I find it works sort of really well alongside those kinds of things. What are the main sort of differences that you see between that perhaps academic perspective on photo voice and the more community centric one? Do you see any things that sort of resonate as the same, and other differences? I'm quite interested in these, because I think the audience for this might be coming at this from different perspectives.
It's interesting because it is a research method, and then there's this community aspect of it. And so when it's a research method, I know I feel like academics are like, exactly how does this, it's so prescriptive, and how exactly do we do this, and like how many, they want to know how many sessions need to run, and what do we need to do, and when do we finish this, and then it's almost like, and I hate to say this because it's people, but experiment. Like we put something in and we get something out, and I think on the community side, it's the understanding of how flexible it can be, and how that you really put participants or co-researchers first. And so when I think about, and when I talk to people about, you could have a project where you don't have the research questions or the photo taking questions or prompts, and you come to the group with those. And I think that's a much more kind of community based approach. Whereas when you're working on the academic side, you might be under an IRB, you might be under, you already wrote a proposal and put together all the pieces. And so you've developed the questions, you know exactly what and if you're going to veer off from the plan, you're going to have to talk to somebody about that. Whereas on the community side, I think it could be like truly participatory, and like, we have the number of sessions that we need to get this done. And once we feel like we've saturated the topic or talked enough about it, I recently facilitated a project where we actually gave the questions as facilitators, but then midway through, we had some space in one of our sessions where we said, so do these questions resonate? What else do we want to talk about within the topic? Within this space, what else do you all want to take pictures of? And where do you think, what do you think is most important? Where do you want to see this conversation going based on what you've done? So it was a way to kind of give them some questions, and then allow our co-researchers to take that and run with that. And I think that's a much more community approach. And sometimes you're under the constraints of like, participants can only sign up for 5 sessions, and they need to be done within 5 weeks, and boom, boom, boom. And so it's not, and there's not one way or another way.
No.
I think the best is putting participants first and making sure that they're getting out of it. They're leading the way in the way that they can. Some participants can't lead the whole project.
In the work that I do, there'll be a host involved who have the trust of the community or have the relationship already. So I'll be working with them, and then the people taking part, and that piece of really just sort of managing everybody's expectations going into it. That sort of the groundwork almost, it like really sets it up then for hopefully a meaningful experience for everyone involved, because it can be a bit sort of uncertain coming into it, can't it? People are in this social media saturated age, it still seems like an alien concept for people, doesn't it? It's like, oh, you want me to use a picture to describe how I'm feeling? It's like, well, yeah, you do it on flipping Instagram, all day. So I think people on one level are quite comfortable with the use of images, but then you take them out of that comfort zone into an area where people are less accustomed to it.
And making that distinction between
yeah,
Instagram and the project photos, and actually having to name it, like, this isn't
yeah,
Instagram, this isn't going on Instagram.
Well, I find it a useful tool, especially working with young people, but not just young people. But I find it a useful tool to get into the sort of critical thinking piece. Almost like, people are bombarded with imagery via social media and often not given the opportunity to sort of critically analyze what they're being presented with. So I try and bring that in, where we'll perhaps search out some hashtags and look at how different images are being used, or we'll look at how images are being used in the news, in the media, try and find some stories that are going on that maybe link to the topic, or at least give us a window into a perspective. And I find that's always really interesting as well. It's almost like that people know it on one level, but until we create the space to really take a step back from it and say, what's going on in this image? What story am I being presented with? What emotions am I being invited to experience? And maybe, put in our community development worker hat on, saying like, maybe those levers are things we could use. Maybe if we want to tell our story, I work a lot with, I always say I tend to work with people who are on the margins and who are often perhaps misrepresented or misunderstood, don't have the opportunity to tell their story in the way they want to tell it. So, let's use the levers of how advertising works, how marketing works, how social media works, how, branding works, and then let's use that to our advantage. Let's frame the story the way we want. Let's evoke the kind of conversations that we think are important. So, I love that aspect of it.
And it's supporting them in the way that, is necessary for that. So I know we did a project with Girls Inc., and we actually gave them, these are middle school girls, and we actually gave them those Polaroid cameras that pop out right there. And to give film. But it was an interesting shift because they are on their phones all day and, taking photos and doing all of this. And so, it's an interesting shift to say, okay, you have 10 and, 2 can be of your friends or your pets or we let them take a couple test shots, but the bulk of this is film and this is a set number and the bulk of them need to be based on these prompts and are going to go into your photo journals. And so getting them to kind of, I think it's like a slow down, we're not taking for social media. We're not snapping 100 of the same thing. You get like a couple opportunities to.
It's really tapping into that mindfulness photography of being conscious of your surroundings. And
I'll often try and work up to that. So I'll intentionally build in activities which perhaps aren't really related to our bigger question, but really are just an opportunity. Let's get comfortable taking photos together, and I'll do treasure hunt activities or do little photo walks just to get into the headspace of this is the thing we can do together, and then almost start layering it. Let's look at what's going on in the world. Let's look at what's going on in my community. What's going on for me, not with a story or a narrative or a set of words. Often that just comes through the conversations as well. So people will say things really heartfelt in that moment. And I find my biggest challenge is just capturing that rather than going, oh, could you just say that again? Like, oh, say what again? And then they try and say something else. And like, oh, no, the first thing you said was the most
that wasn't quite
perfect.
It.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, it's gone forever. So I really love that side of it as well, is just sort of, and then it builds, doesn't it? And, builds over time. You're adding to it. You have it. So I definitely want to experiment with the instant cameras. The nearest that I've got to that so far, I have got some instant cameras, but I always find it hilarious when I show up to a group of young people and with these little now ancient point and shoot cameras, because they're like, one of them said, what's that? I'm like, why would it just be a camera? And I'm like, well, in the olden days, also, it's because so you're not on Snapchat.
We had to carry our camera and our phone in our bags.
Yeah. They're just like horrified at the idea. So I thought that was hilarious that they were just mortified at this camera that was to them ancient technology. But it was a good opportunity to just be, we're just going to do this one thing, no distractions. Place, I think, is always a big factor in the work I do, but that's like really local compared to the scale you're at. You're literally worldwide. It's in your name. I checked. So are there any kind of different sort of flavors that you see people sort of bring into the table in terms of their approach and how they do it?
It definitely place is a big factor when you're thinking about photo voice, and you're thinking about kind of how you can adapt the method. So we have some folks thinking about wanting to be on the ground and doing a project in a week, and having co-researchers actually go on these photo missions in a particular area. So part of the sessions are having them take the photos. They're working in groups to take the photos to stay safer, or for particular transportation issues, or what we were working on a project. We were thinking about, if we're running this whole for the week, can we get a van to pick people up? We're serving breakfast and lunch and shuffling people around, and then that's a way of doing this as well. And then there's others who are like, well, we will all be online. We'll find a time, we'll send out a doodle poll and figure out when people can tap into these sessions that are going to happen over the next 6 to 8 to 12 weeks. Or, if you're working, I know we've worked with a couple of professors who've used this method in their classroom. And so they have students for a semester. And so they're going to be working on the project for a semester. So how does that look? And what type of resources and supports and things do you bring in when you are working with a group for a semester versus a whole week? So when you think about, are we going to bring in a professional photographer, or have a side? You've talked about some of these things that you might do. I'd also be interested in hearing kind of what you bring in to build the group morale, or some of these extra things that don't necessarily have to do with photo voice, but kind of play into your group dynamics and what you're offering and what you're sharing with folks. And so thinking about those items, obviously it looks different depending on the context that you're in, where you're located on the globe, and then kind of what you have available. So are folks using cameras in their pocket? Are they cameras in their pockets? Are they using their phones to take pictures? Or would it be fun for them to kind of go to a dark room and have a lesson on developing a print, and that's something that they're getting in addition to the Photo Voice project as well? Or, if they're using phones, we're meeting on Zoom, it's pretty quick, and they don't need all of the background information on photography, so to speak, but want to jump right into the project and the support. I also noticed during COVID, and I think this is true always, but we ran a project during like the thick of 2020 when everyone was at home and seriously on the couch, and it became this project was already scheduled, it was already planned, and like we ran it, and it became almost like a therapeutic, like it was our weekly group meeting, and people would be texting people like, oh, are you okay? Are you going to jump on? Come to the group. And so in addition to it being Photo Voice, it was also a way for everyone to say, like, is everyone doing okay? Are we still here? What's happening in your world? And I think that that's something that can happen. This was a group that was meeting every single week for a longer period of time. And so and they already knew each other. We were that camaraderie that happens, and it depends on kind of what your group makeup looks like and where you're located and what you're doing.
I love that idea. It became more than just the Photo Voice project, and I see that play out in some of the projects that I'm involved with. I think there is an element of scale, or the length of time people spend together, especially depending on the types of things that we explore through the project, that people can connections form, trust is built, relationships are established, and that's not a small thing, is it? It's even just within the group, even if there was no exhibition, there was no public sort of display of the work or the stories, that actually there's still a really powerful sort of process at work in terms of just the people, the participants, the people who sort of involved.
Absolutely. And
Often think about that.
We might be meeting family members who
Yeah,
happen to
yeah,
walk by, jump on. We're hearing about some really real topics that people are
yeah,
bringing up, and so
yeah,
it has the power to bring the group together in a different way than other group projects.
yeah, yeah. Definitely, I that's definitely feel that too. So if someone was hearing this podcast, hopefully many people hearing this podcast, and thinking about how do I get involved with Photovoice Worldwide, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so we have a few different opportunities. Our community webinars we offer about 4 times a year. So that might be a way if they have projects going on or just joining to hear about projects happening or topics. We have our blog on our website, and this is sharing about projects and experiences of people from all over. And then we're always inviting people to share about their experiences as well. We also have our second Photo Voice conference coming up next October. So whether that's submitting a submission in the spring to share about their project, or just joining in October to learn about what people are doing all over. Those are some great ways to get involved with what we're doing.
And of course, we're on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Yeah.
Chat with us, bump into us online, and really love to talk to anyone around who's interested in this work and wants to either get involved more or wants to share with us, or brainstorm a project. It's all up for grabs and on the table.
That's really brilliant, and yeah, the conference highly recommends. The webinars I've been involved with. I think my internet wasn't behaving itself last time round, so I am definitely making sure that I've got good internet for the next conference, so I can get fully involved in that. I think it's really useful, and it's great that you're doing it as well. That you're supporting practitioners and connecting people around this stuff. I think it's really important stuff that you're doing. So thanks so much for joining me today and for sharing your stories and your journeys with me. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.